All right, here's my quick recap of our lesson 521, talking about 30, 60, 90 triangles and 45, 45, 90 triangles. All right, the first thing I'm doing is just like going onto the learning log, and I'm going to draw out the two different kind of triangles we see here, the first being our 30, 60, 90. Okay, and I'm just making a generic 30, 60, 90 triangle so that we can evaluate what's happening, what the pattern looks like. So we have a 30, we have a 60, and we have a 90-degree angle. Okay, our 30 is always our shortest side, so I call it the short leg or the short side. Okay, and we can see that if I leave it as a variable, it would be x. Okay, so it's some value x. Now, to figure out for the rest of the sides, being our long leg and our hypotenuse, there's a pattern that exists. And that pattern is, if you know your short leg, you can multiply your short leg by the square root of 3, so x times the square root of 3 to figure out your long leg. To find your hypotenuse, you can do x times 2. So the way that this works is generally I'll give you a problem, and maybe I will tell you that the short leg, so the leg that's across from the 30, maybe I'll tell you that that has a length of 2. I'm going to ask you then to find the other two missing side lengths. Well, according to the rule, according to the pattern, to find the long leg, it is your short leg multiplied by the square root of 3. So this would be 2 times the square root of 3. To find your hypotenuse, it is 2 times 2, which would be 4. So you can always see this is the pattern that's going to exist. Your short leg is always going to be, or your hypotenuse is always 2 times bigger than your short leg, and your long leg is always square root of 3 times bigger than your short leg. Okay, we'll see a couple more examples after we get to the 45, 45, 90. And the 45, 45, 90 we will do right here. So on any 45, 45, 90 triangle, we have the angles that are in the name. We have a 45, we have a 45 down below, and we have a 90 degree. Okay, the pattern for this, keeping it generic, is across from your 45 is an x, and since this is a 45 as well, that's also across from it is an x. Okay, meaning that if the number here was a 1, the number here is also a 1, so you could replace any value for x. Now, for the hypotenuse of a 45, 45, 90, it's just one of your legs multiplied by the square root of 2. And so your generic version of it is x times the square root of 2. Now again, let's say I give you a problem where x equals, or the side length equals 6. Okay, well in a 45, 45, 90, that means the other leg must equal 6. And your hypotenuse is your leg times the square root of 2, so your hypotenuse is 6 times the square root of 2. Let's do some examples from the previous slides. So the first one here in A, we see that the short leg here is 10. So in my generic version, that would be like my x. Okay? Because your short leg is always your x value, or your kind of your starting point. Then to find my long leg, and my long leg is always across from my 60, so in this case my long leg is this side, I need to multiply x, or in this case 10, by the square root of 3. And so your x times your square root of 3 side here is equal to 10 times the square root of 3. We know that my long leg, or my hypotenuse is 2 times x, and x in my case is 10, so that's 2 times 10, which is 20. Again, you see the pattern where the hypotenuse is 2 times bigger than the short side, and the long leg is square root of 3 times bigger. Let's look at one like B. In this case, 4 is like our x because it's one of our legs for 45, 45, 90. We know that the other leg is the exact same, so it's also x, which is also 4. And then my hypotenuse is x times the square root of 2, and in this case, x equals 4, so we have 4 times the square root of 2 here. Seeing another one, this time we have that my hypotenuse is actually 8 times the square root of 2, so my side that generically is 8x times the square root of 2 is now 8 times the square root of 2, so that tells me x must equal 8. So my side here must equal 8, and my side here must equal 8, because this is also x here. And I just keep using this x because that was how I did it with my generic triangle in that learning log there. The other way you could see it is, you know that the short leg, or the leg of a 45, 45, 90 has to multiply by square root of 2 to get your hypotenuse. And 8 times the square root of 2 does give you your hypotenuse. Other way to see this one is, you could do, to go from hypotenuse to leg, you could divide by the square root of 2, just performing the opposite operation to it. Okay, we'll keep going here. I see that this is my 30-degree angle. The 30-degree angle is like my x. This is like my x square root of 3. And this is my 2 times x. So I'm thinking, okay, I can figure out what x is, because 2 times x needs to be 6. And the only number that works is 3, because 3 times 2 gives me 6. Now that I know x equals 3, I can plug it in for my long leg and get 3 times the square root of 3. Here's a little tougher. We know that across from my 30 is my x value. I know that my long leg is x times the square root of 3. And I know my hypotenuse is 2 times x. So if I know x times the square root of 3 is 9 in this case, I can just divide both sides by the square root of 3 and get that x equals 9 over the square root of 3. Okay, now that I have x, I can find my hypotenuse by doing 2 times x. I'll do this last one, and then I should end the video, keeping it somewhat short. Okay, so then I have my angle here is also 45 for a 45, 45, 90. I know that the hypotenuse, the generic hypotenuse of a 45, 45, 90 is x times the square root of 2. So in this case, x times the square root of 2 equals 6. I can divide both sides to find what x value my leg is. So x divided by the square root of 2, 6 divided by the square root of 2, that square root of 2 is going to cancel out, and you're going to be left with x equals the 6 divided by the square root of 2. And since it's 45, 45, 90, this side is the exact same as well. Okay, so again, generic version or triangle versions across from the 45s are the exact same. So in this case, it was 6 and 6 that I came up with. Then your hypotenuse is your short leg times the square root of 2. For 30, 60, 90, your short side, which I could call x again, all right, and then it's x times the square root of 3 for the long leg, 2 times x for the hypotenuse, and again, if I plug in 2 for x for my short side, then it's 2 times the square root of 3, and it's 2 times 2, which should give you 4. I hope this helps bring some clarification to this lesson. I know that I'm doing the same problems as before, but I'm kind of trying to explain it in a different way.